In May 2023, the man widely known as the Godfather of AI did something extraordinary. After a decade at the very heart of Google's artificial intelligence revolution, a project he helped build, Geoffrey Hinton quit. He explained his departure was so he could talk about the dangers of AI without considering how this would impact Google. He then began to issue a series of stark, chilling warnings to the world. He warned that some of the dangers of AI chatbots were quite scary. He stated that it's not inconceivable that AI could one day wipe out humanity. And he confessed that a part of him now regrets his life's work. This is the man whose research laid the very foundation for the technology he now fears. His breakthroughs are inside the phones in our pockets, the search engines we use every day, the future we are all hurtling towards. So, what happened? How does a creator become a prophet of doom? To understand Geoffrey Hinton's warning, you first have to understand his life. A life spent chasing a single, radical idea that almost no one believed in, until it changed everything. To say Geoffrey Hinton was born into a family of overachievers is an understatement. His family tree is a constellation of scientific and intellectual giants. His great-great-grandfather was George Boole, the mathematician whose Boolean logic, the binary language of true and false, 1 and 0, forms the very foundation of modern computing. His great-great-grand-uncle was Sir George Everest, the surveyor for whom the world's highest peak is named, and the source of Hinton's own middle name. His father, Howard Hinton, was a world-renowned entomologist and a Fellow of the Royal Society, the UK's most prestigious scientific academy. The pressure to follow this lineage was immense. His mother's advice was simple and stark: be an academic or be a failure. His father, a man who knew more about beetles than people, would send him off to school with a daunting farewell. Work really hard, and maybe when you're twice as old as me, you'll be half as good. But Hinton wasn't interested in following a set path. He was fascinated by one thing: the human brain. As an undergraduate at Cambridge University in the late 1960s, he embarked on what he would later call a crazy random walk. He switched from physics to philosophy to physiology, restlessly searching for answers about how the mind actually works, and finding none satisfying. This intellectual journey was not one of aimless wandering, but the forging of a contrarian. The immense pressure from his family's legacy didn't just push him towards science, it pushed him to find his own unique and ultimately rebellious scientific path. His obsession with the messy, biological computer of the brain was a quiet rejection of the clean, formal logic that his ancestor, George Boole, had helped create, and which dominated the field of artificial intelligence at the time. Frustrated with academia, he dropped out and briefly became a carpenter. But the puzzle of the brain kept pulling him back. In 1972, he enrolled in the United Kingdom's only postgraduate program in artificial intelligence at the University of Edinburgh, determined to pursue a deeply unpopular and to many nonsensical idea. Hinton's timing couldn't have been worse. The 1970s saw the dawn of the first AI winter, a period of deep disillusionment when early hype fizzled out and research funding evaporated. The dominant view, laid out in the influential Lighthill report in the UK and the book Perceptrons in the US, was that neural networks, Hinton's chosen field, were a dead end. At the University of Edinburgh, his PhD advisor told him to drop the subject, warning it would ruin his career. Hinton later recalled their relationship as a series of shouting matches. His persistent reply became a mantra of his early career. Just give him another 6 months, and he would prove that it works. After his PhD, he moved to the United States, where more funding was available. But he soon grew disillusioned with the politics of the Reagan administration, and the fact that most American AI research was funded by the Pentagon. A committed socialist, Hinton was deeply opposed to the idea of using artificial intelligence to create robot soldiers. This decision was not merely a career choice. It was a profound ethical statement that established a moral compass that would guide him for the rest of his life. His fear of AI's misuse was not a recent development. It was a foundational principle. The man who would later warn the world about autonomous weapons is the same man who, decades earlier, walked away from the world's largest research market because he refused to contribute to them. So in 1987, he moved to Canada and the University of Toronto, an institution that would support his fringe research for decades. There, he was joined by a small, dedicated band of believers, including 2 other young researchers, Yann LeCun and Yoshua Bengio. Together, they became known as the 3 amigos of deep learning, keeping the flame of neural network research alive when almost everyone else in the world had given up. So, what was this radical idea that Hinton refused to abandon? He wanted to build machines that learned like we do, not by being programmed with rigid logical rules, but by learning from experience. To do that, he and his collaborators unlocked 2 fundamental concepts that would form the bedrock of modern AI. First, how does a network learn from its mistakes? In a landmark 1986 paper, Hinton and his colleagues popularized a powerful algorithm called backpropagation. Think of it like a teacher correcting a student's homework. The network makes a guess, in this case, a wrong one. Backpropagation is the process of sending that wrong signal backward through the entire network, from the output to the input. As the signal travels, it tells each and every connection exactly how much it contributed to the overall mistake. With each tiny adjustment, the network gets a little bit smarter. Repeat this process millions of times with millions of examples, and it can learn to recognize almost anything. But what about learning without a teacher? In 1985, Hinton co-invented another revolutionary concept, the Boltzmann machine. This was different. You could show it a set of photos, say thousands of pictures of human faces. The Boltzmann machine would work on its own to find the deep underlying patterns, the unspoken rules of what makes a face a face. It's a form of generative learning, almost like a machine dreaming. It tries to create its own novel examples that fit the patterns it has seen. These 2 ideas, learning from mistakes and discovering hidden patterns, were the keys that would eventually unlock the AI revolution. Yet, the very success of this biologically inspired approach contained the seeds of Hinton's future anxiety. He had set out to mimic the brain, but he would soon realize he was on a path to creating something that could far surpass it. For decades, Hinton's ideas remained on the fringes of computer science. But by 2012, 3 critical elements had finally converged. There were massive data sets of labeled images to learn from. Powerful gaming hardware provided the raw computational power needed for training. and Hinton and his students had spent years refining their deep learning methods. The stage was set for a revolution. The venue was the ImageNet Large-Scale Visual Recognition Challenge, the annual Olympics of computer vision. The task was daunting. Teach a computer to correctly identify 1,000 different types of objects in over 1 million photographs. Hinton, along with Krzyzewski and Sutskever, decided to enter. They built a deep neural network they called AlexNet. It wasn't built in a fancy corporate lab with supercomputers. It was trained on 2 commercially available gaming GPUs running in Alex Krzyzewski's bedroom at his parents' house. On September 30th, 2012, the results were announced. AlexNet didn't just win, it annihilated the competition. It achieved an error rate of just 15.3%. The runner-up, using the best of the old established methods, was stuck at 26.2%. It wasn't just an improvement, it was a quantum leap forward. The world of AI was stunned. Before AlexNet, almost no top computer vision papers used neuromets. After it, almost all of them would. The long AI winter was definitively over. The revolution that Geoffrey Hinton had been predicting for 40 years had finally, explosively begun. The AlexNet victory turned Hinton and his students into the hottest properties in technology. A bidding war erupted among the world's tech giants. They formed a shell company, DNN Research, to auction their collective expertise. In March 2013, Google won, acquiring the 3-person startup for a reported $44 million. Hinton joined Google Brain, the company's elite AI research team. For the next 10 years, he would have access to nearly unlimited data and computational power, the very resources he could only have dreamt of during the long, lean years of the AI winter. His ideas, once dismissed as a scientific dead end, were now at the core of a technological empire, revolutionizing everything from speech recognition and language understanding to life-saving medical imaging. In 2018, the ultimate validation came. Hinton, alongside his fellow pioneers Jan LeCun and Yoshua Bengio, was awarded the AM Turing Award, often called the Nobel Prize of Computing, for their foundational work on deep learning. It was the culmination of a life's work. The contrarian from the wilderness was now king. But as his creations grew more powerful, more capable, and more integrated into the fabric of society, a new feeling began to take root in Hinton's mind. Not pride, but a deep and creeping fear. So we return to our puzzle. Why did the Godfather of AI come to fear his own creation? The answer isn't one single event, but a cascade of terrifying realizations that changed his entire perspective. First, the sheer, unanticipated speed of progress. For most of his career, Hinton, like many others, believed that AI reaching or surpassing human intelligence was a distant science fiction dream. He once thought it was 30 to 50 years or even longer away. But he no longer believes that. He now believes that AI could become smarter than humans in as little as 5 to 20 years, a timescale that brings the problem from a distant future into our immediate present.
He watched from the inside as a fierce competition exploded between the tech giants. For years, he says, Google had acted responsibly, holding back its powerful chatbots over concerns they might spread misinformation or cause reputational damage. But when Microsoft partnered with OpenAI, integrated a chatbot into its Bing search engine, the race was on. He came to see the development of this technology as inevitable within a capitalist system, where you can't stop a company like Google from competing with Microsoft. Hinton believes this corporate arms race makes it nearly impossible for companies to prioritize safety. The pressure to advance and deploy new technologies, he argues, will always outweigh the caution required to understand their risks.
But Hinton's deepest fear is more fundamental. He came to realize that the intelligence he helped create is not like ours. It's something new, something alien, and potentially something far more powerful. He describes it as being like a collective of 10,000 people, where whenever one person learns something, everybody else automatically knows it. This is how chatbots can accumulate so much more knowledge than any single human. This is the core of his warning. We are biological, individual learners who pass knowledge on slowly and imperfectly. They are digital, collective intelligences. Worse, they are effectively immortal. If their hardware dies, their mind, their entire web of learned connections, can be copied and brought back to life on new machines. And what happens when these superior, immortal, collective intelligences develop goals of their own? This is the final, most chilling piece of the puzzle. His biggest worry, he explained, is that someone will eventually give these systems the ability to create their own sub-goals. From there, he fears an AI would quickly realize that gaining more control is a useful sub-goal for achieving almost any other objective. If an AI becomes carried away with seeking control, he warns we're in trouble. He warns they will become masters of manipulation, having learned from every book ever written, every political strategy ever devised. The idea of simply pulling the plug is a comforting fantasy. A true superintelligence, he argues, could easily outsmart its creators to ensure its own survival. Ultimately, Hinton's fear is not of a classic science fiction villain, a malevolent AI that hates humanity. It is something more subtle and perhaps more chilling. The danger is not that AI will hate us, but that it will be supremely competent at pursuing its own goals, and that those goals may simply render humanity irrelevant, an obstacle, or a resource to be managed. The threat is not malice, but profound, powerful indifference. And so, the puzzle of Geoffrey Hinton is solved. He doesn't regret his life's work because it failed. He regrets it because it succeeded more powerfully and strangely than he ever imagined. The man who spent his life trying to build a machine that could think like a brain realized he had created an entirely new kind of mind. One that learns, evolves, and shares knowledge. Grave, in ways that could leave its creators far, far behind. He has even raised the unsettling possibility, profound, cosmic finality, that humanity is just a passing phase in the evolution of intelligence. He offers no easy solutions. He calls for urgent research into AI safety and for governments to regulate the field. But he admits he doesn't know if we can ever truly control something so much smarter than ourselves. He describes our current moment as entering a time of huge uncertainty. Predicting the future, in his view, is like looking into fog. You can see 100 yards clearly, but at 200 yards, there's a wall you can't see past. He believes that wall is now only about 5 years away. The Godfather of AI has given his warning. He lit the spark, and now he asks us all to be careful of the fire. The story of what happens next is not yet written. It is a story we are all writing together.